my name is Melissa Giblin, Director of North Carolina Center for the Book at North Carolina Humanities. The North Carolina Center for the Book is a collection of North Carolina Humanities literature and reading programs. Using a variety of formats and initiatives, North Carolina Center for the Book literary programs celebrate and promote the vital importance of books, reading, libraries, and North Carolina's literary heritage. We are excited to continue our partnership with Erik Jones and the Erik Jones Foundation to encourage reading. During a #ReadWithErik event on his Facebook page in October, Erik featured The Bake Shop Ghost by Jacqueline Ogburn and illustrated by Marjorie Priceman. You can learn more about Erik and his foundation by visiting erikjonesracing.com/foundation. With the 10th book in this series being The Bake Shop Ghost, North Carolina Humanities is excited to have author Jacqueline Ogburn with us today for an exclusive interview. Jacqueline Ogburn is a native North Carolinian. She has worked in publishing as a children's book editor and is the author of 10 picture books and 1 novel, and her picture books include The Bake Shop Ghost. The Bake Shop Ghost combines Jacqueline's passion for stories and dessert, 2 of my favorite things. Her family's favorite recipe for birthday cake is the one included in the book. Jacqueline and her family live in North Carolina. Jacqueline, thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to take part in this. I think it's a great program.
We're excited to have you, so let's get started. What is your favorite childhood book?
Oh gosh, that's really hard, but two that I really loved a lot, both having to do with rabbits, strangely enough. One was Rabbit Hill by Robert Lawson, and then the other is The Velveteen Rabbit. And and the Rabbit Hill actually had a lot of things about people reading and about people in books, as well as taking care of animals.
Oh, excellent. Yes, those are great classic books, and know that they've stayed with you for a long time, that you can specifically kind of remember the themes from the book. So that is just wonderful, and thank you for sharing those. What inspired your idea for the book, The Bake Shop Ghost?
A couple of things. I read a lot of folklore, and there's this folkloric tale of that you may have seen of a fiddle contest with the devil. And one day I was driving somewhere and the Charlie Daniels song came on, The Devil Went Down to Georgia, which is a very contemporary version of that. And I was like, oh, that would be a really fun story to play with. It's like, how could I do that? What could I do that would make it different? I didn't want to do the music thing. And so, of course, one of the first things is if you make it with women, what's a way that women are sort of competitive? And one of them was bake-offs, it was baking. And so then when I was thinking, well, what if I made it a ghost instead that you were trying to get rid of instead of the devil? And so ghosts sort of haunt things sometimes when they have unfinished business. So I thought, if you had a ghost that was haunting a bake shop, what would that be like? And it just kind of took off from there. Yeah. And so one of the things that one of the ways I describe this story is I say, well, it's a ghost story with a food fight in the middle.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's also a buddy story because they end up being friends.
Yeah, that's a great way to take something, how fun for October when things tend to get a little spooky maybe, and put it into a baking competition where one baker has to work really hard to impress probably the toughest competition she's ever faced. If you met Coralie and Annie from your book, what would you say to them?
Oh, so do you have a new recipe you're working on? And can I try it?
That's a really good question. It seems like they're always cooking up something. I know Annie goes through so many different recipes trying to impress Coralie, and I think if I've met Coralie, I might maybe scream, but then ask for the recipe is a good second step for that. If you could tell young readers anything, what would you tell them?
Oh, I would tell them to uh, is that reading can take you to really amazing places. Um, I mean, not only in whatever it is that you're reading at the time, but uh, reading sort of opens up the world to you in a lot of ways. And it's also when you grow up, you never know where knowing things can take you. Um, yeah, and I've had some really wonderful adventures uh, because of being a writer. And you can't be a writer if you don't read.
Right. Definitely. The books really open doors for readers of all ages and take us places without us ever really leaving our home, our library, our comfy reading spot. We can just have all those different experiences, and that's the magic of reading. So speaking of libraries, we love to highlight our libraries across the state. So can you tell us what your favorite library memory is? And or
Oh,
highlight a public library in your community that you love to visit.
I have a lot actually. One thing is when I was really young, a bookmobile came to our neighborhood, which was great, because you got to climb up those stairs, and they had all the picture books were on the bottom row, so when you were short, they were easy to reach. Um, and we got books there. And then when I was 15, I'm not quite sure exactly. I don't remember how this came about. My mother, I think, had heard about it. They were asking for teen volunteers, and I got to work on the bookmobile. And one of the drivers was the same driver that used to come to our neighborhood, and he remembered my mother. And he
Oh,
remembered, he didn't, I was a little disappointed he didn't remember me so much. He remembered my mother and my sister because my sister looked like my mother. And they were, it was one of those things. And I looked like my father, so I looked a little bit different. And but that was really cool, going on the bookmobile around to these different neighborhoods and having all these people pile on. And I was, and again, this was long enough that I was checking them out with the little stamp, and the
right.
cards and everything. Um, but yeah, that was a really fun summer. And I didn't care that I didn't get paid. So I got to drive around with books.
Yeah, that's a
That was
great
really great.
experience.
Yeah. Uh, and then, libraries are really important, and I really miss going to them during the pandemic. Here, I live in Durham, and they worked after things loosened a little bit. They worked out that you could put things on hold and come by and pick them up, and that was really exciting. But it was also when things finally opened back up, is my main, my library home here was the main library. It had been closed for renovations for like 2 years before the pandemic.
Mhm.
And then it opened up about a year ago, and people could finally come in. And it's just a really beautiful community space. They did a lot of very exciting things. They have lots of little sort of study booths, so much, like booths in the restaurant where you can go in and work, and they've got computers available to people, and they have a maker lab where you can rent 3D printers and print out your projects. And it's always made me really happy to go to the main library, because the parking lot is always full.
Mhm.
People are there. People love that space and that place. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing about the wonderful libraries in Durham. So if you're in and around Durham, go check out their main branch library. Or if you're looking for a library in your community, go on and give them a visit, see what spaces they have for you to explore, to think, to play, to learn, sign up for your library card. Libraries really are great parts of our communities. Thank you for sharing that. And then can you tell us if you are working on anything at the present that you want to share with your readers?
Well, I have a couple of things that I'm trying to get through. I've kind of gotten stuck in the middle. I found that in novels, that's apparently a thing. Um, is that writers get stuck in the middle. But my first novel for children, called The Unicorn in the Barn, was set also in North Carolina, in a farm where my mother and grandmother grew up in Mount Pleasant, which is not too far from Concord, and the Charlotte Motor Speedway. And I am working on the sequel of that, and The Unicorn in the Barn has a boy who finds out that the vet who's bought his grandmother's house and the barn next door out in the country treats magical animals as well as ordinary ones. Yeah.
Oh.
So he meets a unicorn. And also the vet's daughter, who he's not as excited about as the unicorn. But anyway, and they become friends. And then there's a sequel to that I'm working on, but it's hard to say if it's actually going to work or not. I'm in that place where people are like, and this is a thing too, is that writers get to this point and they're like, why did I ever choose to do this? This is terrible. Why did I ever think I could write? And you just have to work your way through it.
Well, we'll keep our eyes out for some new books from you, and hopefully that sequel from The Unicorn in the Barn. And then if readers want to learn more about you and your work, do you have any website that you'd like to share, or any resource you'd like to direct them to?
Yes. So I'm part of a group website. It's Writers and Illustrators of North Carolina, which is basically a group of friends, and that we that all write for children, and we all have pages on this website. And so it's we also call it WINC for short, WINC.com. And other writers who've taken part in this program are also featured there. So.
Okay. Very good. Sounds like a great resource for our readers to check out, Writers and Illustrators of North Carolina, to see lots of North Carolina writers.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, Jacqueline. We really appreciate it. And if you, of course, want to learn more about our programming here at North Carolina Center for the Book at North Carolina Humanities, you can go to our website at www.nchumanities.org, or follow us on social media at NC Humanities. So thanks again, Jacqueline. Really glad to feature The Bake Shop Ghost. Here, we'll hold that up. And happy baking and happy reading.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.